Good morning, sir. Good morning, everyone. So today, the topic that we will be discussing is about waiting for service. So after listening to this discussion, here are the things that you should understand. First is how to plan and manage the wait, how to make any wait for service as short and pleasant as possible, how to make any wait for service seem short and pleasant, how to plan for capacity shortages, how to manage the guest's perception of the wait, how to offset the wait's negative effects by managing the value of the experience provided to the guest, how to use queuing theory to plan the wait, and how to stimulate a wait. So, in this slide naman makikita natin yung mga keywords or terms na may encounter natin throughout the discussion. How long we wait and how long we are willing to wait are fascinating subjects. While solid scientific evidence is hard to find, various estimates suggest that we wait in line about 2 to 3 years in a lifetime. Nobody likes to wait in line, yet almost every hospitality organization relies on waiting lines or queues to match its serving capacity with the number of guests who want service. Planning and managing the wait of the customers are among any service provider's fundamental concerns. In some respects, the wait is an inevitable part of the service experience since no organization can perfectly prepare itself to serve all guests whenever and whatever they want. So, kahit saan namang aspect ng buhay na experience natin maghintay, diba? Tsaka, sabi dito, wait is inevitable. Dahil totoo naman, hindi natin maiiwasang hindi maghintay sa anumang bagay. Dahil wala namang bagay na instantly lang mapupunta sa'yo once na sinabi mo gusto mo to. When the wait begins, the guest experience often starts off not with a wow but a wait. The wait for service begins at the entrance to the restaurant, the automated message on the phone, the log on to a website, or the line in front of Space Mountain at Walt Disney World Resort. If there are two restaurants next to each other, one with a line and one without, a person might actually prefer the restaurant with a line, thinking that the one where people are waiting must be worth a wait. If the expected benefits of the wait outweigh the costs of standing around, then the guest will wait. No matter how good the service is, if the customer begins to experience anger or distress, then their expectations will be harder to meet. So, sabi dito, sa wait nagsisimula ang guest experience. Just like the stated example, na kung meron mang dalawang restaurant na magkatabi, yung isa yung may pila tapos yung isa naman wala, mas pipiliin ng tao yung restaurant na may pila dahil iisipin niya na worth the wait yung service sa restaurant na yon dahil nga pinipilahan siya. Kung pakiramdam nung customer na magiging worth it yung paghihintay sa service, magi-stay sila para maghintay. Pero tataas yung expectation ng guest sa service nyo kapag matagal yung waiting time to the point na makakaramdam na sila ng inip habang naghihintay. So, capacity and psychology, keys to managing line. Managing the wait has two major components. First is to keep the wait as short as possible, and second is to ensure that guests with comorbidities have their expectations met while they wait. Sa pagmamanage ng wait daw, meron tayong two major components. Una, yung gawing maikli ang waiting time ng guest as possible, at pangalawa naman ay sisiguraduhin nating satisfied yung special guests natin such as PWD, buntis or senior citizens habang naghihintay sila since sila nga yung priorities. The capacity decision results from careful study of the expected demand pattern. Planners must predict three factors that drive the capacity decision. One is how many people will arrive for service. Second, at what rate they will arrive. And third, how long the service will take. if on every day that the organization is open for business, the same number of people were to arrive for service every day, their arrivals were evenly spaced throughout the day, and serving each person took the same length of time, the capacity decision would be easy. So, ang pagde-decide ng magiging capacity ng facility is sa pag-aaral ng expected na demand pattern. Sabi rito, the planners should predict the three factors which are kung gaano karami yung guest na expected mong pupunta, kung may certain time ba silang dumadagsa, at kung gaano ba katagal aabutin ang service na i-offer kada guest. Kung yung business mo is consistent na dinadagsa ng same number of people every day para mag-avail ng service or ng product mo, then mas madaling mamamanage yung pag-serve sa guests since alam mo na nga kung ilan or gaano karami yung guests na pupunta sa'yo to avail the service or the product. Parang expected mo na ganun karami or ganun karami yung magiging customer mo for that day. Capacity designs can affect perceptions of service quality, while a restaurant with too little capacity will fail to meet guest expectations for prompt service and short waits. A restaurant with too much capacity can also fail to meet guest expectations. Too much capacity may mean higher variable costs as well. The manager may schedule too many servers who end up being paid simply to wait around. So, ang pag-design or pag-plan ng capacity daw ay makaka-epekto sa quality ng service na mabibigay mo sa guest mo. Halimbawa, kung yung restaurant maliit lang tapos may time na packed kayo sa guest, halimbawa maraming customer for that day, hindi nyo mafulfill yung expected na short wait ng guest since maliit nga lang yung facility nyo. That also means konti lang din yung staff, pero kapag malaki naman yung restaurant at kaya mag-accommodate ng marami, malaki rin yung chance na may days na konti lang or halos walang customer. Ibig sabihin, mag-end up na naghihintay lang yung staffs. Halimbawa, if yung dami ng tao na kaya i-hold ng restaurant nyo masyadong marami, kailangan rin damihan lahat ng aspects ng business. For example, sa staff nga, kailangan ng mas maraming staff to accommodate guests. Because of that, may chances na parang since expected nga na marami yung guests sa isang araw, mag-stock or mag-assign yung manager ng workers at kapag hindi na-meet yung expected na bilang ng guest sa araw na yon, hindi makakapag-work yung staff pero kailangan mo pa rin siyang bayaran. Kailangan pa rin siyang bayaran ng manager since nag-attend sila sa work. In an ideal world, planners would be able to determine the exact capacity required to serve each guest at the moment when the guest expects service. So, gusto ng mga customers na once nag-arrive sila, meron ng available na table or meron na agad mag-accommodate sa kanilang staff to provide service. Guests want that kind of service and organizations want to provide it. Both are frequently disappointed. What to do? Because people do not arrive at service operations in need offer ordered patterns, they sometimes have to wait for service. When hospitality manager sees that waiting lines are becoming long, they have several choices. Managers should choose the option that allows both customers and the organization to come out ahead. So, kapag daw napapansin na ng managers na pinipilahan na sila or nagiging in demand na yung service or product nila, or humahaba na yung waiting time ng customers, meron silang mga choices na pwedeng pagpilian. Pero yung dapat piliin ng manager ay yung parang magbe-benefit hindi lang sa business kundi pati na rin sa customers. So first is close the doors to further customers. This choice is highly undesirable, but sometimes the movie theater manager or rock show entrepreneur must tell those waiting, sorry, we're sold out. So, dito kadalasan siya sa mga cinema, concerts, kailangan nating i-inform yung mga upcoming customers na sold out na or wala nang available na seat once na ma-fulfill mo na yung maximum capacity ng facility. Then, number 2, add capacity. Because this alternative is usually expensive, organizations do not usually choose it unless they believe the high demand causing the waiting lines will continue. The organization will be particularly hesitant to add capacity if its design day capacity is already at a high percent level, meaning that the organization is already at or below capacity most of the time. Stopgap measures for adding capacity temporarily are sometimes available. So, itong choice raw na to is di masyadong pinipili kasi it will cost you a lot of money. But kapag napapansin naman ng organization na nagiging mataas yung demand or dumadami yung customer, then they will choose this one. They will add capacity katulad na lang nung nauuso ngayon na ice cream yung may maraming flavor. Dati, sa Cavite City lang yung main branch nila. Tapos ngayon, ang dami nagre-request sa iba't ibang lugar na magkaroon sila ng branch, ganun. Ngayon, meron na silang branch sa ibang lugar like Tansat, sa Noveleta, pwede na sila mag-dine-in sa branch nila sa Noveleta. Tapos meron silang parang truck on the go na pwedeng pumunta kahit saan, and yung owner, hindi siya natakot mag-risk na mag-branch out or maglagay ng bagong facility since in demand nga yung product niya. Next is manage demand. Simply informing guests of when the busy and slack times occur may smooth out demand. Service providers can also schedule appointments or offer inducements to customers to use capacity at non-peak demand times. Requiring reservations at a restaurant is an example for the first method, and early bird specials or discounts on airline travel or hotel rooms at off-peak times are examples of the second. Some organizations, such as airlines and hotels, can ask that guests make reservations, even guaranteed reservations in some cases to help manage demand. Customers are often willing to call for reservations with such organizations because they do not want to take a chance on not getting a flight or a room. No one wants to arrive at the cruise ship dock only to find that all rooms are occupied. So, dito sa number 3, base sa pagkakaintindi ko, dito pwede mong gamitin yung overthinking skills mo. Pwede mo gamitin dito yung wide imagination mo to analyze things that will be better for your service. Katulad ng example sa number 2, ice cream with variety of flavor. Sumikat siya from Oreo ice cream lang. So, nagsimula siya in offering sa Oreo ice cream lang na variant. Then, siguro yung owner nag-isip pa ng ways kung paano magiging in demand or patok yung product niya. Nag-risk siya na what if magdagdag pa ako ng flavors or choices that the customers can choose para hindi sila magsawa agad sa Oreo ice cream lang. Kaya nagdagdag siya ng ibang variety of chocolates such as Kit Kats, Twix, mga ganon. Tas ngayon din meron na silang Mango Bravo ng contest. Kung ano-ano na lang basta mananatiling in demand yung product niya. Number 4 is allow the line to form and then manage the line by diverting customers. When lines are unavoidable, one way to keep customers happy is by offering people waiting line something else to do. Having a gift shop in a Hard Rock Cafe or Rainforest Cafe gives patrons an opportunity to go and do something while they wait for their table to be ready. These diversions not only benefit the guest by creating the perception that the experience has begun, but they can be highly profitable, sometimes more profitable than the service product itself. Best example dito is sa mga theme parks. If peak season or maraming tao, syempre maraming pipila sa rides and attractions, diba? Dito, hahayaan mo lang pilahan yung mga yon, and then Para mabawasan yung boredom nila sa paghihintay, pwede ka mag-offer ng pwedeng ibang gawin habang naghihintay sa turn nila dun sa certain ride or attraction. Halimbawa, sa certain attraction, bibili ka ng ticket na nabibigyan ka ng specific time kung anong oras siya magi-start. Ang mangyayari habang maghihintay yung guest, maghahanap sila ng pwedeng ibang gawin habang naghihintay. So number 5 is do nothing. The organization can accept the fact that it will make customers unhappy with a wait and hope that they aren't so unhappy that they leave and vow never to return. Maybe lines form on rarely, and so the organization is not willing to spend money to address an occasional problem. Some establishments actually seem to benefit from doing nothing. For example, the long lines at some nightclubs or restaurants signal an establishment that is trendy, in demand, and exclusive. Ang example dito is yung mga pila nga sa nightclubs, restaurant, and establishments na trendy at in demand. Kahit walang ginagawang action, if trendy yung product or service, makaka-attract ka pa ng guests or customers since it is trendy nga. Parang yung other guests mo na yung gumagawa ng way para maka-attract pa ng ibang guests. So, design day. Whether they realize it or not, or whether they do it consciously or not, all hospitality organizations use the design day concept. The design day is the hypothetical day that a facility, attraction, or service was designed to handle comfortably, but not too comfortably. Planners set the design day capacity to handle a predetermined amount of demand without compromising guest satisfaction. Benchmark organizations know just how long the lines can be and still remain within limits acceptable to guests. To provide a guest experience with as little waiting as possible, the planners will set the design day percentile high and build more capacity than might otherwise be practical. The cost of an unhappy guest to a major theme park that relies on return guest visits must be carefully balanced against the costs of building capacity. Sa pagkakaintindi ko, ang design day yung parang prediction or wild guess ng organization base sa kung gaano karami ang guest na ma-accommodate nila comfortably. Kahit marami yung bilang ng customers that day, ma-handle nila ng maayos without sacrificing yung satisfaction na mararamdaman ng guest. So, kung yung pin-provide na number of guests is less than the expected design day capacity, magiging happy or satisfied yung customer. Pero yung facility is magiging underutilized or hindi masyadong nagamit. Pero kapag yung guest ay nag-exceed sa design day capacity niya, magiging unhappy or hindi magiging satisfied yung customer sa service. So, capacity day. Many organizational planners also calculate and use a capacity day, the maximum number of customers allowed in the facility in a day or at one time. This number is often set by the fire marshal based on the number of square feet each customer must have available. The capacity day may be set by the organization itself to represent a point beyond which overall customers' dissatisfaction with crowds, lines, or delays in service is unacceptable. Ito namang capacity day, sa bilang ng guest sila nag-accommodate. Ang bilang ng guest na ina-accommodate ng organization or ng business is yung maximum capacity ng facility. They will keep on accepting guests until meron pang slot or may space pa para sa guest. Ang possibility dito ay magiging disappointed or hindi masasatisfy yung guest sa service since sa sobrang dami ng tao, hindi nila ma-accommodate or mabibigyan ng maayos na service yung guest.
Few organizations in any industry have the luxury of adjusting capacity quickly or managing demand by getting customers to show up when the organization wants them to, instead of when customer wants to come. Most hospitality organizations must therefore rely on predicting and managing the inevitable waiting lines that are created when customers arrive looking for service. May ilang organisasyon sa anumang industriya yung may kakayahan sa mabilis na pag-aayos or pamamahala ng demand. Yung inaayos na nila yung pamamahala bago pa po dumating yung mga customers, kumbaga nag-a-advance thinking na po sila dahil dapat po sa hospitality organization ay mabilis po yung serbisyo para po maiwasan yung paghihintay ng customers at maiwasan ang pila sa waiting lines na nalilikha ng mga dumadating na customers na naghahanap po ng serbisyo. The general problem for planners is that adding capacity costs money, such as by hiring more servers but reduces the wait, which improves guest experience quality, guest satisfaction, and guest loyalty. Reducing capacity saves money but increases the wait, which decreases guest experience quality, guest satisfaction, and guest loyalty. How is the hospitality organization to find the proper cost-benefit balance? So, yung problem nga para sa mga planners is yung malaking pera na nagagastos gaya na lang ng pagkuha ng maraming server para sa mga customers. Pero yung resulta naman ito is mababawasan yung oras ng paghihintay ng customers, nasasatisfy din po ang mga customers at nakakatulong din ito para ma-improve yung guest loyalty ng mga customer pag nasiyahan sila or nasatisfy sila sa service ng organization po. The place to begin is in the use of queuing theory, sometimes called waiting line theory, and the mathematical solution that this technique offers. A typical queuing theory problem facing an organizational planner might be if an average of 40 cars arrives per hour at a drive-thru window with a single server, and if the server takes an average of 2 minutes to fill an order, how long does the average car spend in line? During an average hour, how many minutes will the server be working and how many minutes idle? Most applications of waiting line theory in the hospitality industry are based on the idea that people do not arrive in neat patterns. The typical approach is to sample the arrival and service patterns of guests and use this information to simulate the distribution that best matches the reality for the particular organization guest. Characteristic of waiting lines. All waiting lines have three characteristics that any model must include: arrival patterns, the number of guests arriving, and the manner in which they enter the waiting line. The arrival could be random, such as patrons to a restaurant, in bulk, such as busload of tourists, or in some other distribution that is difficult to describe, such as patient coming to a hospital emergency room, in varying but not completely random intervals. In the context of customer service, ang arrival pattern po ay isang volume analysis na ginagamit sa workforce management para matukoy kung kailan ang peak hours ng mga ticket, tawag o chat session, influx on a particular day or week to plot resource accordingly. This is done to maximize utilization and to minimize response time. Queue management is easiest when customer arrivals can be scheduled through reservation. Even if arrivals cannot be strictly scheduled, they may be controlled. Charging extra at peak times and offering discount during the off-session could be example of arrival control strategies. Ang pamamahala ng pila po is madali kapag yung mga customers na dumadating ay nakaschedule o yung pwede silang ma-manage o makontrol. Ang paniningil ng dagdag sa peak hours at pag-aalok ng discount sa mga off-season ay mga example ng mga diskarte or mga strategies. Queue discipline. How the arriving guests are served. Option are first come first serve. Last come first serve, not a formula for hospitality success, or some other set of service rules. For example, guests with reservation or waiting takeout food only may be served first. or restaurant parties of two may be served when a two-seat table is available regardless of how many parties of three or more are in line ahead of them. Guests understand such a service rule. Queue discipline indicates the manner in which the units are taken for service. Ang mga karaniwan na queue discipline po is yung first come first serve or yung first in first out na tinatawag na FIFO. Pero minsan may iba pang queue discipline sa serbisyo gaya ng last come first serve na nangyayari minsan sa kaso ng mga message o service ng mga random order. Line types. Organizational planners must decide what line types will best meet customers' needs and expectation. In the following discussion, channel refers to a server and pace refers to a step in the service experience once it is underway. Single channel, single pace queue. The basic line type is the single channel, single pace queue, one server, one step. The second queue type is the single channel multi-pace, such as a cafeteria line or the drive-thru at a limited menu quick service facility. A single pace system. The customer is served from only one server and then exits the system. While in multi-pace system, the customer is served from several servers before exiting. Many hospitality organizations find this method the most efficient way to manage their lines as it accounts well for the varying lengths of time that it takes to serve different customers. Essentially, is it two or more multi-channel single-pace queues in sequence? The guest waits to get to the front of one line, then goes to the next available server.
Virtual queues. A final type of queue that is becoming increasingly popular is the virtual queue, or the line that isn't visible. Most of people don't like to stand in line, and the virtual queue enables them to avoid doing so. All of us hate to wait long, so we prefer the way that's why minsan mas pinipili nating mag-online appointment upang maiwasan yung mahabang pagpila. This type of queue, based on the idea underlying Disney's Fast Pass, was first introduced at Walt Disney World Resort in 1998 in response to a need to better manage waiting time to allow more efficient time use for guests and more efficient capacity use by the company. Walt Disney World Resort ang una nagpauso ng virtual queues. Sa kagustuhan nilang mas mapabilis at mas makabuluhan ang pag-aantay ng guests, na imbento nila ang Fast Pass. This virtual queue system is quite different from the waiting line experience of most guests. Customers can let the computer hold their space in the virtual line while they visit other attractions. Isa sa mga advantage ng virtual queue ay ang mas pagpapabilis at pag-iengganyo sa mga customer upang piliin ang paces na ito. The 60-minute flexibility was created to ensure that guests have the opportunity to engage in other attractions during the wait time without worrying that they might be late for entries. Within the 60-minute window, they can walk right in. In addition to the primary benefits already described, the innovation of the Fast Pass virtual queue system provides many secondary benefits. During peak days, Many guests previously waited in line as many as 3 to 4 hours in a day for the most popular attraction. The virtual queue concept has many potential applications in hospitality. Cruise ships and resorts are similar to theme park in that guests have many activities from which to choose. So virtual queues could be used in the same way. Hindi naiiba yung cruise ship at resort sa theme parks na madami pong activity. So, kinakailangan din sa cruise ship at resort yung virtual queues. So, hindi mahihirapan yung client na pumila at mag-antay ng matagal. Restaurants that hand out paging devices to indicate to guests when capacity is available can keep queued up guests from having to stand in actual lines. Any freestanding attraction that experiences long lines for admission and entry is also a potential site for creating a virtual queue.
Which queue to use? Guest preferences drive planners' decisions about queue types at the best organizations. McDonald's believe that using multiple single-channel, single-pace lines meet customer desire for quick service. Lahat ng establishment alam kung anong mas makakabuti at makakatulong sa kanilang food establishment. Wendy's, Burger King, and most other quick-servant restaurants have a different opinion. They use the single-channel, multi-phase queue with customer placing an order with a server at one location and moving to another server to pick it up. Other quick-serve restaurants and many airline counters, all customers get into one line, often a serpentine line that snack between frost and velvet roofs. Once customers reach the head of the line, they wait to enter whichever channel leads to the next available server or attendant. These different queue choices by company planners are based on their study of what guests want in particular situations. Pinag-aralan nilang mabuti kung anong mas makakabuti sa kanilang establishment at mas makakatulong upang mas mapabilis at mas hindi mahirapan ang mga customer sa pagpipila tuwing bibili sila ng pagkain sa kanilang establishment.
Common sense suggests that the best queue type for an organization to use is the one that guests perceive as enabling them to begin receiving service as quickly as possible. The guest focus planner knows that the best line type is the one that customers prefer, and that may not be the type suggested by common sense. For example, guests may prefer to stand in a certain type of line because they think they will be served faster even if they won't. Lahat tayo ayaw mag-antay, ayaw pumila ng matagal, kaya mas pumipila tayo sa alam natin kung saan tayo mas mapapabilis at mapapadali tayong matapos. Gina Trapaelli and her colleagues suggest that planners need to consider at least 4 factors when choosing a queue type for a given situation. Planners should select the queue that best provide customer with all the following. The 4 factors is a sense of progress toward their goal or service experience. We need to assure that the guest na may mapatutunguhan yung pagpipila o pag-aantay ng guest ng matagal. 2 is a sense of control over what is happening. 3, activity. And the last one is a sense of fairness with how they wait. People generally seem to prefer the single serpentine queue with several channels at the end of it, each leading to a server, even though the length of the single line can be intimidating. They don't have to think or worry about which line to choose, whether to change lines if the present line seems slow or another line seems to have gotten shorter, or whichever someone joining the next line over will be unfairly served more quickly. Ito yung kinakainisan natin sa tuwing pipila tayo, yung mga singit-singit kasi may kakilala, may backer, ganong ganyan. Unfair sa nag-antay ng matagal, pumila ng matagal mo. In short, while a single serpentine line may yield the same average weight as multiple lines, the variance in weight times is much smaller. With multiple lines, you have the chance to get through much quicker than customer in other lines, but you also run the risk of being much slower. The serpentine line guarantees first come, first serve. It is also becoming more widely adopted at hotels, banks, by Wendy's and Burger Kings, Best Buy, and many others. McDonald's, Walmart, Target, and most grocery stores continue to employ multiple lines. Line simulation, a gift shop. While planners can use a statistical distribution, in some situations only simulation will yield the quality of data necessary to explain and predict the reality of a particular queue. Because Christmas-related items are available in regular stores only during Christmas season, Rudolph Gift Shop that was attached to the Christmas tree restaurant does a huge business during the rest of the year. In fact, many customers shop at Rudolph's rather than dine at the Christmas tree. Over several weeks, the shop manager can observe the flow of customers and time how long they are in the shop. If sufficient observations are made, the shop manager can accurately describe customer arrival patterns. The quantity of items that they bring to the checkout stand and their time spent in Rudolph shopping for those items, enough to determine how to stop the checkout counters appropriately at different times. Allocation wheels. Since people vary in both quantity of purchases and speed of writing checks or making payment, the time per service and the proportions on the wheel representing those times would likely vary. By recording the numbers on a simple chart that notes the time between arrivals, time per service, and finally, the time customers were waiting, the entire day's activities can be simulated to determine the maximum, minimum, and average length of the time customers waited for service plus the total waiting time for all the customers. This fairly simple illustration shows the usefulness of mathematically determining the relationship between the service provider's capacity and the average waiting time per guest, finding a way to balance the two. Certain basic forces affect waiting lines, and they can be expressed mathematically. These same techniques can be used to determine the ideal number of monorails in theme park, toll boats on a turnpike, front desk people in a hotel, servers and cooks in restaurants, space in a parking lot, sky lifts on Skyloop, or any other application where an organization needs to balance the cost of providing capacity with the quality of the service experience. Balancing capacity and demand. Determining The proper balance between supply and demand requires more calculation than just the basic. The gift shop planners in the earlier example should gather more data about customer behaviors and expectations. Two major dimensions are involved. The first is the way the time spent waiting appeals to the guest, and the second dimension is how to minimize the negative effect of the wait by managing the value of the experience to the guest. Managing the perception of the wait. Understanding what makes time fly while guests wait in the line is the fundamental concern for planners seeking to improve the quality of the wait. Gestologists have found that time flies not only when they are having fun but also under circumstances. Hospitality planners must remember that everyone is different, and these differences will influence how people feel about waiting in line. How customer feels about the wait is at least as important as how long as wait is. Is it true na pag busy tayo, hindi natin namamayalayan ng oras? Occupied time feels shorter than unoccupied time. If you are busy doing something while you are waiting, the time seems to go by faster. 2. Time spent waiting to begin the service. Experience will feel longer than the actually spent in the experience itself. Theme parks and other entertainment attraction may offer pre-attraction feature termed the pre-show. Example nito ay yung mga mascot na lalapit sa mahabang pila and then mag-show sila to make the guest entertain and attract. 3. Anxious wait feels longer than more relaxed wait. If people are afraid of what will happen to them once the service experience begins, the waits will seem longer. 4. Wait of uncertain length feel longer than certain ones. Waiting without knowing when the delay will be over causes any wait to feel much longer. Let your guests know what to expect. Let the guests know kung magtatagal o mas madidelay yung pila so they won't feel unexplained waits feel longer than explained waits. When you don't know what is holding up the line or causing the delay, the wait will feel longer than if you know the reason. You should inform the guests kung ano yung nagpapadelay ng pila so hindi sila maiinip.
Unfair waits feel longer than fair ones. If customers feel that the queue discipline is consistently followed and fairly used, then the wait seems shorter than it does when people are allowed to get away with cutting in line, or people are served out of the apparent sequence of service order, violating the perceived queue discipline. Gusto ng mga tao patas ang paghihintay nila. Kunyari sa isang fast food ng mga inasal sa may counter, naghihintay sila ng order sa table nila tapos hindi nila alam or matukoy kung sino na ang next na masaserva ng foods. Kaya minsan kung sino pa ang naunang umorder siya pa ang nahuli mabibigyan ng order. Kaya dapat patas tayo sa mga guests or customers natin. Solo waits feel longer than group waits. Waiting by yourself feels longer than waiting in a group of friends or even in a group you don't know. For example, sa pila, maraming nakapila pero kung mas marami silang kasamang friends, hindi nila mapapansin ang oras. Kesa sa ikaw lang mag-isa sa pila, mas dama mo yung sobrang bagal ng oras hanggang sa maiinip ka na lang. Uncomfortable waits feel longer than comfortable ones. All hospitality organizations dread seeing guests queue up in the not sun, rain, or hair uncommon conditions. But finding a way to keep people comfortable in queues while the wait is a real managerial challenge. Nangangamba ang mga empleyado na naghihintay ang mga guests sa hindi komportableng lugar. Kaya naghahanap or gumagawa sila ng paraan para mas maging komportable ang mga guests habang naghihintay. Kung mapipil natin na komportable yung mga guests natin, syempre hindi nila mapapansin na naghihintay sila. Hindi rin nila mapapansin yung oras. Interesting waits are shorter than uninteresting ones. Saying that occupied waits are shorter than unoccupied ones, this principle gets worse when activities are uninteresting. Bigyan ng entertainment para sa mga guests na naghihintay like magazine or television where people needs to wait. Kasi kapag naghihintay, syempre kailangan mo na ng entertainment ng mga guests or para habang naghihintay sila, meron silang ginagawa, hindi nasasayang yung oras nila at hindi rin sila maiinip. Happy waits are shortened than sad ones. Customers who are having fun, enjoying themselves, and feeling positive about the wait itself and the service experience to come will find the wait to be shorter than those who are unhappy, sullen, or feeling negative about waiting. Kailangan mag-isip ng mga paraan upang mapanatiling masaya ang mga customers at gawing mas maganda ang pakiramdam ng mga hindi nasisiyahang mga customers. Tungkol sa paghihintay, bigyan natin sila ng entertainment like magazines nga, comics or televisions upang mga guests or customers natin hindi mainip or magalit or ma-feel nila na uncomfortable. The emotional wait state. In all these waiting situations, the customer's emotional state will significantly impact the wait for service. Planners should keep the different reactions in mind when structuring organizational cues. Iba-iba ang mga nararamdaman ng mga tao sa anxiety, kawalan ng katiyakan, discomfort, at iba pang perceptual na impluensya sa oras ng mga paghihintay. Dapat tandaan ng mga employees or empleyado or ng isang organisasyon ang mga reactions nito para mas masolusyonan nila agad. Crowds and clientele. While planners should consider individual differences as much as possible in designing and managing waits, the line for large crowds must be designed to accommodate what the average guest expects when entering the process. Dapat daw accommodating ka at considerate pagdating sa mga bagong pasok na customers. Kailangan friendly ka din, di ka mahiyain or hindi ka masungit. Dapat ma-feel ng customers or guests na komportable sila sa hotel or restaurants na or kung ano man yung business mo na pinuntahan nila. Waits in contrast. In all these waiting situations, the contrast effect will also influence the perceptions of the wait. If a customer has just had a comfortable, totally explained, predictable wait followed by a subsequent. Dapat daw advance ka mag-isip, dapat magawa mo yung expectations ng mga customers. In short, dapat presentable at manageable ka sa mga customers. Bago pa lang dumating yung mga bagong customers, dapat alam mo na yung dapat mong gawin para ma-reach ng mga guests nila yung expectations nila. Wait that is unpredictable, anxiety-producing, and of uncertain length. The second wait will seem longer than if a well-managed wait had not just occurred. Higitan ng expectations ng customers when it comes in serving at kung paano nila mapifeel na priority sila kahit na maraming customers dun sa business mo. Service value and the wait. The more value the customer receives or expects to receive from the service, the more patiently the customer will wait. The second major strategy is to manage the perceived value of the service for which the customer is waiting. Gawin mo yung dapat in-expect ng customers. Lawakan ng pag-unawa at matutong umintindi ng mga customers. Kasi may mga customers kasi na mainipin or makukulit Kaya dapat tayong mga employee, hindi tayo agad basta-basta mainitin ng ulo. Kaya mas lawakan pa natin lalo ang pag-unawa sa mga guests or customers natin. Before service. Before receiving the service, waiting customers can be provided with the informations or even with some other service that will enhance the value of the service that motivated them to enter the queue in the first place. Bigyan a little background ng resto or in short, basic history kung bakit masarap ang mga dishes ng restaurant at saan dinedicate ang mga dishes. Before service, such thoughtful touches not only distract and occupy the guests, they also add value to the experience that the hotel and restaurants are selling and for which the guests must wait in the line. Maging thoughtful sa customers, ipa-experience sa kanila ang worth na binayaran nila, magbigay ng magandang services sa kanila. During service, during the performance of the service itself, its value can be enhanced over the customer's expectations by many strategies. If the service meets or exceeds expectations, when the customer gets it, the wait was worth it. Ang halaga nito ay mas mapapahusay kaysa sa inaasahan ng mga customers sa paraan ng iba't ibang klase ng diskarte. Kapag na-reach ng customers ang expectation ng serbisyo, mas magiging worth it ang paghihintay nila. Providing customers with a service that is beyond their expectations enhance the value of the service experience or increase the perceived cost of abandoning the wait. Pag hinigitan natin yung expectation ng isang customers sa pagsaserbisyo, mas mag-e-enhance yung value ng service experience ng isang guest or customers ng mga naghihintay. After service. After the service, the value of the experience in the eyes of customers can sometimes be enhanced, so they feel better about having taken the time to wait on the service in the first place. Mabibigyan mo sila ng better experience when it comes in serving. Hanggang sa pag-alis nila, mareremember nila yung good service na ginawa mo. After service. This type of personal attention after the experience can help compensate for the wait before the experience. Yung type daw ng personal attention na yun ay tumutulong na masatisfy yung guests or yung customers natin pagtapos sila kumain or maservan na hindi mo nagawa nung bago sila umorder. Managing waits in the imperfect world. Planning and managing the wait line are fundamental challenges for managers in the hospitality industry. Kailangan pagplanuhan mo na ang waiting line. Isa itong challenge sa isang industriya ng hospitality. Kasi yung mga guests, hindi mo naman sila basta-basta pag-iintayin sa gilid lang. Kailangan may location or waiting area para sa mga guests or customers. And especially, mas magiging komportable sila. Next, pag may plan na, kailangan na natin yun i-manage ng maayos at mapanatiling ganun pa rin kaayos hanggang dulo. Managing waits in an imperfect world. The critical point is to make invisibly clear to guests by everything that everyone in the organizations does and says that they respect their customers' time, appreciate their tolerance of any waits, and that the company is doing everything it can to make waits fair, fast, comfortable, and as enjoyable as possible. Ang point dito is dapat maging malinaw or gawing mas malinaw sa mga customer kung ano yung mga ginagawa ng bawat isa sa organisasyon para ma-feel nila na ginagalang nila yung mga bawat oras na nagpapahalaga sa customers. Like, naghihintay sila sa isang fast food ng orders pero syempre bukod sa kakain sila, may iba pang appointment or schedule ang customers. Kaya dapat sa mga employee, dapat nasa tamang oras yung pagsaserve ng mga food sa mga guests kasi mahalaga ang bawat oras at dapat fair din ang trato ng mga employees sa mga customers. Kung sino ang unang umorder, siya dapat ang priority at unahin bigyan ng orders bago ang sumunod doon sa una-una. Kaya naman ang business or kumpanya ay ginagawa nila ang lahat para mas maging komportable, masaya at mas nag-e-enjoy sila.